Let's rock and roll in three,
Cool.
2, 1.
Yeah, but before we start, I just have to say I wasn't drinking and partying last week, okay? My brother-in-law was in town. It was his birthday, and we had a few drinks, yeah, and then we were at the casino and he was winning at blackjack, so it was kind of a party and well,
It
yeah, I was drinking and
sounds like
partying.
drinking and
Yeah,
partying and
I was
gambling to
kind of
me,
drinking.
Patrick.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm,
What,
what am I missing here?
what was he winning at blackjack until he wasn't?
You know what? He walked out even. And I figure if you've been sitting at a blackjack table for 5 hours and you walk out with the money that you walked in with, you're winning.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Although if he'd have walked out at 2.5 hours, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little different story. But either way, I was sorry to miss doing the show with you guys.
Oh,
Good
we
move,
missed you
Pistol
too.
Pete.
All right, folks.
Hey, what is the
Welcome.
show, anyways?
Welcome to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. We are bringing you voices from across the Labor Radio Podcast Network. Stories, interviews, conversations that help make sense of work, power, and the lives of working people.
We've got a lineup today that spans the globe from Hong Kong to San Diego to Albany to Philadelphia, whether it's labor leaders facing state repression, tax surveillance reshaping our cities, lawmakers fighting for workers' rights, or historians uncovering working class stories. The network is buzzing.
That's right. Today we'll hear from labor activists defending imprisoned unionists in Hong Kong on the LabourStart podcast. Take a deep dive into surveillance tech on Union or Bust. Listen to a conversation with a New York Assembly member fighting for workers' rights on Union Strong. And take a great look at Philly's working class past on Labor Jawn.
And in our final segment, Reinventing Solidarity brings us a roundtable on 100 years of black labor activism.
Sounds good, guys. Let's get right to it. Here are this week's highlights from the Labor Radio Podcast Network, where the people speak.
And let's begin this week with a sobering international update. LabourStart, in a new 60-second format, reports on Hong Kong labor leader Lee Chuk-yong, imprisoned since 2021 and now facing trial for, quote, inciting subversion, unquote. The International Trade Union Confederation has launched a global campaign demanding his release and an end to Hong Kong's repressive national security law. Here's the latest.
Last time I saw Lee was in 2016 at the LabourStart conference in Toronto. He was our keynote speaker and a powerful voice for the only independent trade union movement in China, the Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions. We discussed the possibility of holding an upcoming conference in Hong Kong. But Lee was arrested in 2021. His trial on charges of inciting subversion is due to begin on January 22nd next year. The International Trade Union Confederation has launched a major global campaign to support Lee and the other jailed leaders of Hong Kong's unions. They're demanding that all charges be dropped, that all trade unionists and other jailed activists be released, that the national security law be repealed, and that the Hong Kong and Chinese governments start respecting human rights, including freedom of association. Lee is a genuine hero who deserves our full support and solidarity. LabourStart will continue to highlight his case and provide news and updates. Stay tuned.
Hey, this is Judy Ansell from the Heartland Labor Forum. We're radio that talks back to the boss, and we're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
And you know, I really love this new 60-second format that LabourStart has started to use because, look, we're all busy, right? But we've all got a minute to find out what's going on in labor around the world.
Next, over on Union or Bust, host Chris Lopez digs into the explosion of surveillance tech in our cities. computer scientist and organizer Lily Irani joins the show to explain how tools like license plate readers and smart streetlights are quietly reshaping policing, data collection, and civil liberties, and what communities are doing to fight back.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I have seen a lot of those license plate readers driving around town, and it's a little creepy.
Oh, I've got worse in my neighborhood because I live not too far from a school. We just got a note. I don't even know how this works, guys, but they're going to install AI-powered surveillance on stop signs. People apparently have been running stop signs or doing the California roll. And so this is all in terms of safety for the kids, which I'm for. But the idea that they're going to put AI on stop signs, it's a little creepy, right?
Wait, this is the same AI that can't keep Waymo cars from colliding with each other or
Yeah,
make them dangerous around school buses?
running over kitties. Yeah, you get the picture.
How's everyone doing? Chris Lopez, your union brother on TikTok, Instagram, all the platforms. Welcome to a special edition of Union or Bust. And we're going to be talking about your right to privacy. We'll be talking about computer science. And I want to welcome our returning guest, Lily Irani.
Hello. Thank you so much for geeking out about this really important and depressing stuff.
And she's a associate professor at UC San Diego. So you're a computer scientist.
Okay, well, so yeah, I studied to be an engineer, and I worked in a tech company for 4 years in Silicon Valley, and I kind of saw how things were from the inside, where you have a lot of geeks with like world-changing aspirations and very high paychecks, not understanding how the tech is actually going to impact people's real life. And then, so being a professor here, like on a good day, I get to meet a lot of people in the community. And one of the things that I learned about was these smart streetlights that San Diego, the city, installed all over the city. They've got cameras, they've got microphones that they, say are turned off. There's like thousands of these cameras around the city. And 3 years ago, a community coalition, the Trust Coalition, that I organized with through DSA, like we were able to, with a lot of other people, like a lot of the Black Lives Matter, like protesters, like push to get those first round of those surveillance camera streetlights shut down. When Todd Gloria became mayor, the SDPD said, hey, we're going to bring them back. And Todd said, yep, we're going to bring them back. And so now we've been living under round 2 of this vast surveillance camera network. And now they come with these technologies called license plate readers. So people are used to the idea of like a video camera, that a lot of people, see it in the convenience store or in a bank or something like that. Just makes them feel like if someone's going to try to do something, they're going to see the camera and not. But license plate readers they're video cameras that film every car that's going on the city's roadways. So when you drive to work, when you drive home, like these cameras are filming your car as it passes. It grabs your license plate. It grabs a picture of your car, including anybody you can see in it. And the license plate becomes searchable. It goes to a company called Flock. Flock is a company in Georgia. They've got their computer servers. They're storing millions and millions of our license plates and where we were going when. For the SDPD says 30 days, but in Austin, they found out that even when local PDs were trying to get their data deleted, Flock had permission in the contract to keep it around longer, because Flock is not just about building like license plate tracking, which, police say they need to find stolen cars, things like that. Flock is a big tech AI company. And so they're using the data that they collect, the license plates, the photos, the video, and they're building all kinds of other products with it. So recently they announced that they've got some computer code they're going to sell that detects unusual vehicle movements. So if you're going on a trip with your family and you're driving across the country and that's unusual, like they could flag you for a hot list and the police officer might pull you over and you might not know why. There was a case in Colorado I just read about last week where basically a woman was accused by the police of being a porch pirate, based on the flock license plate reader
What's a
data.
porch pirate?
Oh, porch pirate's like when you order stuff from Amazon or something.
Okay.
They ship something to your porch, they put it there, and then like someone who steals stuff off your porch.
I've never heard of porch pirate.
Porch pirate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the police had this flock license plate reader trail that they thought, oh, someone stole a package from this house, and they thought her car was seen going by that house. And so they came and arrested her, and then she had to prove that she had not stolen the thing. And in order to, the only way she could prove it is that she actually had, I think she had like a camera in her car, so she was recording all of her own movements. So now her life is basically like she was having to like prove her own innocence against this automated glitchy AI system that the police were, using to basically accuse and arrest her. So like when we say the process is the punishment, like none of us want to be in that kind of legal process. And now we've got this kind of automated thing that's just generating a lot of suspects.
Well, I just want to say thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Our 53rd episode of the Union or Bust podcast with Lily Arani.
Thank you.
Hello, troublemakers. This is Lynn Fields from Resolved Labor Podcast. We're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
All right, from my home state of California, we jump across the country to my adopted home state of New York, where Union Strong brings us an interview with Assemblymember Harry Bronson, chair of the State Labor Committee. Harry shares how growing up in poverty in a family of 12 and confronting workplace discrimination as a young attorney shaped his lifelong commitment to workers' rights and to strengthening New York's labor laws.
This is a great conversation.
For the New York State AFL-CIO, I'm Darcy Wells, and this is Union Strong. He's never been a union member, but completely understands the value unions bring to working people, and he's been an advocate for working people for years. As chair of the New York State Assembly Labor Committee, he's in a powerful position to set the agenda on labor issues, and he's our guest on the Union Strong podcast. Joining me on the podcast is Assemblyman Harry Bronson. Welcome to the podcast, Assemblyman.
Thank you so much for having me.
Obviously, you represent your constituents in the Assembly, but as the chair of the Labor Committee, you're the voice for working people all across the state. So I want to talk to you about some of your recent accomplishments. So how did you get here? Tell me a little bit about your background growing up, because I often hear about, and our own president, Mario Salento, grew up in a household where labor was a part of it. His father was a union member, and he, learned as the years went by the benefits of belonging to a union, having that pension, the health care. What is your story?
So that's really interesting because I don't come here from an experience of being in a union household. Instead, I come here from experiencing economic and social injustice in my own family. I am one of 12 children. I do have I have an identical twin brother. His name is Larry. And my mom and dad both worked full-time jobs.
I guess they'd have to.
Yeah, they'd have to. And they also ran the family farm. When I was very young, I lived in a household that did not have indoor plumbing. In the beginning, we didn't have running water, and then it was gravity-fed running water. We heated it with a wood-burning stove. And notwithstanding, my mom and dad both worked tirelessly to provide for their families. They never had two nickels to rub together. So for me, it's not growing up in a union household, but instead growing up with a mom and dad working for companies who were not organized. And so their pay was very low, their benefits was very low, and they didn't have the benefit of being part of a collective bargaining unit that would improve their lot and the lot of other workers in those industries. My mom was in a manufacturing company and my dad was in a foundry. And again, worked overtime all the time, worked very hard, but never had two nickels to rub together. So that's what brought me to recognized the importance of unions. The other experience was when I was in practicing law right in the beginning. I'm an openly gay man. And when a partner came to me and said that he knew I was gay and that was okay with him, but if other partners in the firm found out, quote, there will be no place for you in this firm. So all of that led me to want to fight and work on behalf of workers, whether it is their right to organize and collectively bargain, or their right not to be terminated based on discriminatory factors. So landing at Blitman and King and doing that work was kind of a journey that made me believe in the work of fighting for workers.
So let's talk about some of the laws that you got passed that are helping working people. Is there something like that you see as your biggest accomplishment?
Increase in the minimum wage. The very first bill I worked on when I came in as counsel of the Labor Committee in 2004 was the minimum wage increase that occurred, that graduated and increased up through 2007 to, the whopping dollar amount of $7.25 an hour. And we fought for indexing, but didn't get it. So, and then there had been a couple of other minimum wage increases after I became an assembly member. And then most recently, a bill that I carried, although the then labor chair picked it up, was the most recent increase to get us to $15 an hour, but then with the indexing that Governor Kathy Hochul helped us get in.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing some of your background, and we look forward to working with you. I know there's going to be a fully loaded legislative session coming up, and we look forward to that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Hey, this is Simon Sapper from the Union Jews podcast. We're proud to be part of the Labour Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 Labour radio shows and podcasts from across the USA and around the world. The Labour Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at labourradionetwork.org.
So now let's stay on the East Coast, where Labor Jawn explores the rich, often overlooked working class history of Philadelphia. Hosts Sam and Gabe talk with historian Francis Ryan, whose essay in a sweeping new 3-volume history of the city highlights Philly's long industrial era, neighborhood unionism, and the stories passed down in working class families. It's a great conversation about why labor history matters. And if there's one thing you can always count on from Labor Jawn, they have great conversations.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that was a very cool episode.
Hello, and welcome to the Labor Jawn podcast, when we dive headfirst into the working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name's Sam. Hi. How's it going? I'm joined by my co-host, as always.
I'm Gabe Christie, and we are joined by a very special guest. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Sure, everyone. My name is Francis Ryan. I'm a labor historian that focuses on Philadelphia. Glad to be here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Very happy to have you.
Yes, we are.
We're bringing you on because you've had an essay included in a giant 3-volume set that I didn't realize was going to be quite so big when I asked for a physical copy of it to celebrate the 250th. But before we really dive into that, I'm always interested in hearing how people got involved in studying labor history, because everyone always has a very different path to get here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, like many Philadelphians of my generation, I was born in the early 70s in a neighborhood called Harrogate, which is like the Tioga Street outstop. And I grew up in an area there where it was still industrial. Like the Lutheran Dye House, which was right across the street from where I lived, was where my grandfather still worked at that time.
Wow.
So I grew up in kind of this lost era of industrial Philadelphia. Probably the last young generation who remembers that. And part of that was the institutions that my family members came from. They were trade unionists. And so I learned about it really from listening to the stories that they told, and they had great stories. And so I didn't learn it in any textbooks, or I didn't learn it in school. I really learned it in my neighborhood and from my family and the people who lived in my neighborhood. Most of my neighbors were blue collar workers. They worked they were bus drivers for SEPTA. They were police officers, firefighters, waitresses at the Mayfair Diner, people who worked for the city, school teachers. And so many of these people were trade unionists. And, I saw it on the bumper stickers on their cars. I knew from, the meetings that people would have sometimes in our own neighborhoods, like in different buildings in the neighborhood had union halls. So it was kind of just part of the air that you.
It's really interesting to hear that, because obviously Sam and I didn't grow up in that world because it had largely been destroyed by the time we were coming of age. Honestly, I was very impressed just looking through the 3-volume set, the amount of space dedicated to labor history, but also how many kind of countercultural and generally protest movements were included in the history as a whole. Because it, like you're saying, that tends to get swept under the rug. And it's a lot easier to just kind of focus on the great man history, and Philadelphia is just Penn arrives, then Declaration of Independence, and then Frank Rizzo. And that's all you need to know about Philly history.
I think that's such a good point. I mean, it is so much of what we are known for is the colonial aspect in the Revolutionary era. But I think that right now, this time that we're living through right now, is a time of kind of a golden era, I think, of Philadelphia history. I think that there's a lot of great works that are coming out looking at Philadelphia from a neighborhood perspective, working class perspective, African-American politics, looking at it from those kind of perspectives. And I think that your podcast is a great example of the fact that a lot of people are just so interested in this material and providing this kind of space where people can take it seriously and talk about it and learn. That's one of the things I love about the podcast. I just learned so much about things that I might have vaguely heard about or not at all. And you kind of go into detail. So I think that there's just so many people, especially the younger generation of people just out of school or still in school, are so fascinated by this stuff. So I'm glad that the encyclopedia, that Charlie Myers did edit it in such a way that it includes the fact that Philadelphia was the workshop of the world, as it was called. I mean, it was such a diverse place of manufacturing. And so much of it is located there in Kensington, which in many ways was its own city in some ways. It was really the main industrial center for Philadelphia. And so there's a lot of great stories that still to be told.
Thank you, Francis, for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the knowledge and insight.
Yeah, thank you. This was an absolute pleasure to finally get to meet you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, this is Gene Lance from Dallas, Texas, where we have the Workers Beat and the Workers Beat Extra. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. More than 200 labor radio and podcast shows across the country and around the world.
Finally, from Reinventing Solidarity, a podcast of New Labor Forum and CUNY's School of Labor and Urban Studies, a panel on Freedom Train looks at a century of Black labor activism and what it teaches today's labor movement about building real solidarity.
I loved this conversation. And, anytime you can invite Bill Fletcher into the house, do it.
Hell yeah. Bill always lightens up the joint.
Welcome to Reinventing Solidarity, a podcast of the journal New Labor Forum and the School of Labor and Urban Studies at the City University of New York. My name is Chris Maisano, podcast host and editor of New Labor Forum. CUNY's School of Labor and Urban Studies recently hosted a panel discussion on Freedom Train titled Lessons from 100 Years of Black Labor Activism, Fighting Racial Authoritarianism and Building Cross-Movement Solidarity. Professor De Leon was joined by author and activist Bill Fletcher Jr., Tamara Lee, Associate Professor of Labor Studies and Employment Relations at Rutgers University, and Cameron Black, Assistant Professor of Labor Studies at CUNY SLU, who moderated the program. The speakers discussed what today's labor movement can learn from this history and how tensions within movements can ultimately help to build their unity and strength. Here's Cameron Black.
I would love to hear from our speakers more about these intersections and how Black activists have shaped the labor movement more broadly, and maybe we can start from there.
Thanks, Cameron. Thanks, Bill and Tammy, for engaging in this conversation with me. So what I want to say about the interconnection between Black politics and Black labor activism over the past 100 years. The first thing is that hardly anybody writes about Black labor activists over the last 100 years, right? When we think about, for example, the struggle for interracial labor solidarity, most of the stories that we tell each other in labor spaces, in labor books, is that interracial solidarity is the invention primarily, the political project primarily of white communists and white progressive CIO organizers and leaders, okay? There are hardly any books at all about the role that Black workers played, right, in advancing the cause of interracial class solidarity. But in fact, if you look at the historical record, as I have in my new book, Freedom Train, what you see is actually that among white trade unionists, white union members, and white workers, folks were uneven, inconsistent in their support of this idea of class solidarity, right, among white constituencies. And that the most consistent advocate for this vision of the multiracial labor movement that we have today were Black workers and Black union activists. And so that's the first thing that I want to say, right, that Black folks really formed the vanguard of the idea of class solidarity over the last 100 years. The second thing that I'll say about Black politics is that it's not a smooth road. We're not talking about, a sort of unified collective struggle of truth and beauty and everybody was together. It was messy. There was a lot of factionalism, especially between what I call the centrist faction and the left faction of Black civil society. But I also want to say that it was that interplay. It was the fight, actually, between the center and the left of Black civil society that pushed the cause of interracial solidarity forward, because it led to kind of the invention of new tactics, new strategies for mass mobilization and building power from below.
One of the things about Black folks and labor that relates to something that Cedric was saying is that Black folks, Latinos, and Asians have been treated up until the 1970s in most U.S. labor as the beneficiaries of what white folks did, or we were kind of the last at the table. And it ignored the different things that we did beginning at the end of the Civil War. I mean, you could actually go back to the 1850s, but I'm going to stick with 1866. From that point on, whether it was strikes that were going on from 1866 to 1868 in the South, whether it was a colored National Labor Union, whether it was the development of the Knights of Labor and the significant role of African American workers, you started to see in the Southwest the contributions of Chicanos. And also, interestingly, the relationship between, this is going beyond Black folks, but the relationship of the Mexican labor movement to the development of the U.S. trade union movement, which no U.S. union that I know of has ever acknowledged, nor has there ever been acknowledgement of the Congress of Spanish-Speaking Peoples, right, which was central in the organizing of the CIO in the Southwest. So we actually built the damn labor movement. If it wasn't for us, there would be no labor movement as we see it.
Again, I would like to thank all of you for this incredible discussion. Thank you so much.
Hey, this is Dave Alpa from Labor Know Your Rights. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at LaborRadioNetwork, all one word, .org.
Okay, let's move on to our speed round segment, Shows You Should Know, because, hey, there's not enough time in our show to include clips of all the great shows that have been released over the past week, but we can make some recommendations of what you might want to listen to over the weekend.
This is your idea of speed round? Okay. All right. SAG-AFTRA Podcast drops a two-parter with James Cameron, why he won't let AI replace actors and why Skynet feels realer than ever. Ooh, scary.
It is worth listening to both parts.
On the Labour Heritage Power Hour, Chris and Elise talked with David Rovics about AI-made music, the Oakland General Strike's jukebox anthem, and preview the DC Labour Chorus show.
Yeah, Chris, I really loved your interview with David Rovics. I mean, you really got into the whole AI in music controversy.
And can I just say, we got more response to that show than to anything else we've done this year. And interestingly, on both sides, pro and con. So it's definitely a hot topic.
The Heartland Labor Forum has Randi Weingarten on to talk about why fascists fear teachers. And they explore wage theft, true crime employers don't want you to hear.
Harold, you're always banging on about fascism.
Yeah, you know, it's getting harder and harder to not talk about it like a buzzword these days.
The real F word, the real F word. All right. We've got a doubleheader, a holiday doubleheader from Economics for the People, which breaks down seasonal advertising hype and the credit store oligopoly behind it.
Hey, Chris, that's a credit score, not a credit store.
Credit score oligopoly. You try saying that 3 times fast.
I know. Hey, I didn't write this down.
Oh, that's right. I wrote it.
Pipe Up wraps the year with UA leaders on wins in 2025, job opportunities in 2026, and their own holiday traditions.
And while we're talking about holiday traditions, while you're driving to the mall doing that last-minute shopping, you might want to listen to OnWriting, which gathers late-night pros Josh Gondelman, Liz Hines, Greg Iwinski, and Sasha Stewart to talk comedy, free speech, and what's next after the writers' strike.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, your roundup from over 200, actually maybe 250 from what Harold tells me, shows in the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
Find links to every show at labourradionetwork.org and follow hashtag LabourRadioPod on Blue Sky, X, Facebook, and Instagram.
And hey, tell us what you think at info@labourradionetwork.org. I'm not going to say this. This is Patrick's line. All right, fine. And support the network with union-made t-shirts. 2 colors, all sizes. Chris and I are wearing them right now at labourradionetwork.org.
I like the gray. It's a very sort of nice, classy shirt.
Yeah, but the black one looks awesome.
The black one is very West Coast stylish. I like it. This podcast recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement.
You damn right.
Edited this week by...
This line is me just saying my name. Patrick Dixon.
Social media always and forever by...
Harold Phillips saying my name.
You guys, nobody reads the script. Why do I do all this work? Produced by me, Chris Garlock.
Stay active.
Stay tuned to your local... Yeah, that's a hard one to say, too. Stay tuned to your local labor radio show or podcast.
And, you know, if we can get our stuff together, we'll see you next week.
Everybody be safe out there.
Stay warm.